Hello everyone, my name is Matt, also known as the Survivor Guy, and today I'm going to be showing you how you can make Survivor's Bo Diddley challenge at home.
For today's challenge, you're going to stand on a very narrow beam while balancing a ball on a wooden bow. If at any point you drop or your ball drops, you're out.
This challenge has appeared on so many different seasons of Survivor that at this point it would be hard to not call it a Survivor classic. And the challenge itself seems simple enough. All you have to do is stand on a balance beam and take a ball and bounce it on your little half circle there, and make sure that you and your ball don't fall off. Since the challenge itself is so simple, it got me thinking, well, maybe it would be simple for me to make that at home so that I can practice. Now you could go on Etsy or something like that and buy this challenge for upwards of $100, but if you, like me, are not in a position to be dropping that kind of money on something like this, I have a solution for you. Now before we can just get down to building this challenge, the first hurdle that we have to overcome is figuring out what size we need to make the challenge. As much as I wish that I could just go online and Google, what is the dimensions of Survivor's Bo Diddley challenge? That information is not publicly available. But what information is publicly available is the height of Survivor contestants. So what I did is I took a screenshot from this Survivor challenge where the camera was as close to straight on as it could be. And this is the picture that I got. So I opened this picture in Photoshop and I drew lines from the bottom of Lindsay's feet to the top of her head. Then I took another line in a different color and measured the width of the bow and the height of the bow from the center, so from the bottom to the highest point. Then what I did is I went to another page in Photoshop, took these three lines and put them all right next to each other. So a quick Google search tells us that Lindsay's height is 5 foot 4 inches or 64 total inches. Now on Photoshop, there are numbers on the side that allow you to figure out the size of certain objects in Photoshop. So for example, that red line, which indicates Lindsay's height, goes from 6.1 to 35.25. We'll call them Photoshop units. They're probably centimeters or something like that, but we'll call them Photoshop units. So that means that Lindsay's height is 29.15 Photoshop units. So if her height in real life is 64 inches, then 29.15 Photoshop units is equal to 64 inches, which tells us that one Photoshop unit is 2.2 inches. And now that we have this conversion factor, we can find the length of our other two lines in Photoshop units and use that to convert to real life inches. So the next thing that we have to measure is the green line, which is the length of our bow. So the length of our bow is 14 Photoshop units, which if you convert by multiplying by 2.2 inches, means that our real life bow needs to be about 30.8 inches. We can also find the blue line, which is the height from the bottom to the top of your bow in the center. The length of that line in Photoshop units was 4.05, which means if you convert into inches, we have 8.91 inches. So the length of our bow needs to be 30.8 inches. We'll round that up to a nice 31. And the height in the center from the bottom to the top of your curve should be 8.91 inches, and we'll round that up to 9. So now that we have the dimensions of our bow, we can actually start constructing it. So the first thing I did, I got out a large cardboard box, I got out my tape measure, and I drew a straight line that was the length of our bow, 31 inches long. Then I found the halfway point, so if our bow is 31 inches, the halfway point should be 15.5 inches, and I drew a straight line from the center to the highest point, which remember should be a 9-inch long line. Now here's where things get a little bit difficult. We have to draw that curve from the corner through that top point to the other corner. And my first thought was to tie a string around a point that we kept at the center and use that to draw a perfect circle around that point. But the problem with doing this is that our bow isn't supposed to be a perfect circle. The bow is more of a half oval that's kind of flattened out than it is a perfect circle. So I abandoned this idea and decided, you know what, I've got the 3 points of contact that I need. Let's just go freehand and hope for the best. If you want the perfect version of this Survivor challenge, then maybe you want to go on Etsy and pay $100 for it. But if you want a cheap version that'll pretty much get you the same effect, this should work perfectly fine. So I traced out the rest of my bow, and now that the whole thing is traced, all I need to do is cut it out. So I'm gonna cut it out the same way that I always cut out my cardboard when I make these DIY challenges. Put a cutting board underneath so you don't scratch up your floor. Take your sharp knife and just go around the entire traced area. You may need to flip it over and give it a little bit of an extra cut to really punch it out, but shouldn't take you that much effort, and boom, you have one part of your challenge complete. Once you have this part cut out, you can take another side of that box, place this on top, trace it so that your two pieces are identical. Once again, take your sharp knife, take your cutting board, and cut it out. So once you have the two sides of your bow cut out, you are going to need to cut out the center so that there's a place for your hands to go and you can hold on to it. This doesn't need to be exact by any means, so what I did is I just got out my knife and I just cut it out. Again, freehand it, should be fine. It's not going to be the prettiest thing in the world, but we're going for function over fashion here. So now that you have your two sides, you need to figure out the length of distance in between them to be able to balance your ball perfectly on top. You want a little bit of either side of the ball hanging over the edge. You don't want it to fall completely through, but you also don't want it so narrow that your ball falls off immediately. So on Survivor, it looks like they use a pool ball. I don't have one of those lying around, but what I do have is a ping pong ball. And the perfect length to rest a ping pong ball on top of this is about 3/4 of an inch. So there are a bunch of different ways that you might be able to fasten your two sides together and get that 3/4 of an inch distance. For me, it made the most sense to get some old toilet paper rolls, measure out to 3/4 of an inch, and cut it. Once you have all of those 3/4 inch pieces cut out, I went with about 16. That might be a little bit of overkill, but you can evenly spread them out in between your two pieces, sandwich them together, and you should be good to go. The only real difficult part is figuring out a way to fasten these tubes in between your two sides in a way that they don't fall apart. For me, super glue worked out pretty well. So I started by just super gluing the tubes to one side and letting that rest for 24 hours to make sure it was fully dry. Once that was fully dry, I super glued the other side and once again, let it rest for 24 hours. I did have to place some books on top to really put some pressure down to make sure that the side was making contact with the toilet paper rolls that I had in the center. Once you let the super glue completely dry, you should be good to go. All right, so now that we have our challenge built, the only thing left to do is test it out. So, Survivor's ready. Hold on, let me grab a grip. No, you stay right there. All right, Survivor's ready. Go. Let's see how long I can do this for and if I learn anything in the process. Oh, okay. Matt with immediate movement, but a nice recovery. Oh. This is much harder than you would expect. Stay in the middle. Nope. No thank you. Stay in the middle, please. Oh, there it goes. Alright, so my first attempt was, quite frankly, pathetic. I did not last very long at all, and I'm not trying to make excuses, but the thing that I found myself struggling the most with was the balance beam that I'm on. I have a plank of wood that I've set up on top of two chairs, and the chairs aren't completely flat. So in addition to trying to balance on a thin piece of wood, I also have to deal with the wood kind of going back and forth like this. So my solution to that for the second attempt, I took my two 30-pound dumbbells and I put them on either side. So now I can shake around like this, and if I don't lose my balance, the plank of wood is not wobbling back and forth anymore. So this hopefully should be a better showing for this challenge. So I'm going to try it one more time. All right, now my ball is in the middle. Survivor's ready. Go. This challenge is on. Matt with a great recovery. A little unsteady though. I found a very steady point now. This this is looking a lot better than my first attempt. Part of me wants to try and get it dead center again, but I think once you have it steady, that's definitely a lot better. Doesn't matter where it is, you just don't want it moving and gathering that momentum. Matt, looking rock solid, like he could stand up there for hours if he needed to. Oh, thanks, Jeff, that's very kind of you. Oh, shoot. Spoke too soon, Jeff. Ah. Never get cocky in Survivor. Alright, I'm actually very impressed with how this challenge turned out. It looks really busted, I will say that. It looks very, very bootleg. But in terms of practicality, I feel like it operated exactly how you see it operate on Survivor. One thing that I definitely noticed from practicing it is you really do want to make sudden moves. I know Jeff always goes off in the background. You don't want to make any sudden moves or your life in this game could be over. But if you make too small of an adjustment, the momentum of that ball is just going to carry it right off the edge. So if you really want to correct for a ball that's making its way toward the end, you don't want to slowly go like this because the momentum of the ball is going to keep it going. You need to cancel out that momentum by moving very quickly yourself. Now obviously you don't want to move so quickly that you throw it completely off the other side, but you do need to make quick and precise movements in order to really balance that ball on there. So all in all, I think this was a smashing success. I think even though our bow kind of looks like crap, it functions very well and very close to what you see on Survivor. And for someone like me who just wants this to kind of practice with and have fun with, I think this is just as functional as the $100+ ones that you're finding on Etsy. Thank you everyone for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe. I would really appreciate that. And if you work at CBS, give me a call. Thanks for watching.